This program is sponsored in part by the National Catholic Society of Foresters. Hello again, and welcome to Looking at Social Justice. It's my pleasure today to follow up on a wonderful program we did last month with Arnold Treviño, talking about a prison experience and a tremendous recovery and a new life. Well, today we have two guests in our studio. Arnold is back for an encore, and Katerina Friesen is here also. And the topic of our discussion today, with some wonderful images and some film, is the Insight Garden program that they are both working at in Avenal. So, Katerina, could you self-introduce? Tell us just a little bit about yourself and why it is that a program like Insight Garden is so important to you in your restorative justice way of living.
Thank you, Jim. Glad to be here today. I'm a gardener by heart. I have always found gardening to be therapeutic and healing in my own life, and so I've been drawn to work with different groups of people who are oftentimes at the margins, people who are not always recognizing or recognized for their own worth, and bringing them together to create community through urban gardening, through permaculture, a way of gardening with nature. I've done a number of urban gardening ministries before, and with Methodist Church, Episcopal Church, and the Mennonites. And now here I am with the Insight Garden program. I had never worked in prisons before, but was really drawn to the work for the kind of inner gardening that we do with our program, where it's not just working with our hands in the soil, it's also working in our own hearts and lives to see what wants to be brought to life. Yeah.
I am so glad, Arnold, that you brought Katerina. We met at that fundraiser a month ago for the Insight Garden program. So, Arnold, tell us a little bit about how in your recovery and in your rehabilitation, it gravitated towards gardening. Why did it go there? What's the attraction?
Oh, the attraction with the Insight Garden program, it brings a different light, meaning into gardening. It's inside and outside gardening. And in working with the fellows inside the prison, we learned that there's more to us than meets the eye. You know, we need to see the potential, and we help the fellows connect not only with our environments, but also with our communities, and largely to connect with themselves. And they need to see that what their potential is, their self-worth. And through this program, they really connect, and they really get to know themselves and see what they can give to society and not just take away.
So you're working together now at Avenal State Prison, where we have a great chaplain, Rodney Ornelas, a Catholic chaplain for the inmates. But let's revert back to Katerina and take us away from Avenal for a moment. And let's go up to another favorite prison we have here in the diocese, the Central California Women's Facility in Chowchilla. Tell us, Katerina, what you're doing up there and how you're working with the women besides working with the men down in Avenal.
Thank you. Yeah, so I've been working at the women's facility in Chowchilla since 2017, where we actually cross paths and work a little bit with Sister Rosa Gembe, your Catholic chaplain up there, who's lovely. And so she has her offices right by our huge garden space, which right now is about 3,500, 4,000 square feet or so, and we're expecting to double that in size pretty soon in the next week to be around 8,000 to 9,000 square foot garden space. So we work with the women there outside in the garden. We usually start out for about 20 minutes, 30 minutes of of just working with the plants, the soil, witnessing the insect life and the biodiversity that comes to the garden. I mean, if you can imagine, inside prison walls, there's barbed wire or there's razor wire, you know, around the facility. It's a very secure, highly walled-in kind of place where there's not a whole lot of green space in these prisons. At the women's facility, there is a little bit more, but we're really trying to create a space for meditation, for healing, for the women to come back into touch with nature and with themselves, with that two areas of life that really prison can often cut people off from, with the natural world and from community and one another. And really, like Arnold said, trying to redraw those connections. So we're outside, we're seeing butterflies come in, bees, pollinators, hummingbirds, ducks even laid their eggs under the deer grass one year. So we found these blue duck eggs out there. They're watering, they're weeding, mulching, and at the same time, we're drawing these metaphors of connection. What are we nourishing in our inner lives? What are we fertilizing? What do you want to weed out? What toxic relationships or inner patterns or behaviors might not be serving you now? Really looking at how do we bring this restorative mindset into all of our work, and using nature as a tool, as a teacher in that process as well. Our curriculum is partly outdoors, like I mentioned, but we also, in addition to the hands-on work, do a whole year-long curriculum in environmental literacy, where we're learning about how we're connected to the larger picture, moving from the individual to the cosmos, how we're part of these larger systems of life, from soil to your habitat, your natural environment. And then we go into some re-entry kind of preparation work. After learning about hands-on gardening, we look at what do you want to garden in your own life as you prepare to be released. Preparing for reconnecting with family and community, connecting them with green jobs and the growing industries around solar, other possible work opportunities like that. And then really looking at supporting their own health and wellness. How are they, choosing to bring more health into their lives, relationally, family connections, community. So it goes from the garden, but it also ripples out beyond. And our real hope here is to create leaders when they come back to their communities. Do we want folks who have really sat around and not done much inner work? Do we want the same people who went into prison, or do we want folks who've had opportunities for transformation and for growth and change? So we're just trying to create a space to facilitate that transformational process that happens when we sit together in a circle and learn and grow together.
Great program.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like it succeeds because the statistics say that if recidivism is 70%, unfortunately, your program that you work on together, the two of you, 10%, that's awesome. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's data-driven to prove that it's not only a beautiful ministry, but it's productive. It's life-changing on the re-entry. So speaking on the re-entry, that would bring up Arnold. And I saw this video. It was amazing. Brandon Johansson did a beautiful spot for ABC 30 News, gave us permission to be able to share it in our program. It's going to introduce us visually to what goes on at Avenal, where both Katerina and Arnold are involved together in a fantastic project. Let's see that beautiful clip, compliments of ABC 30.
I was sentenced to 16 years to life for second-degree murder, and I spent the next 25 years in prison.
I'm blessed. I'm truly blessed to have a man like that share his experience and to uplift us, letting us know it doesn't matter your past, anybody can make it.
One of the biggest distinctions that I see between the prison yards and the college campuses is that in the prison yards, everybody wants to know where you're from. On the college campuses, we don't care where you're from, we just care where you're going.
Arnold Treviño.
So my name is Arnold, and I co-facilitate the Insight Garden program. And that's part of the season. I want to talk about that right now. You guys ready? We're ready. Okay. And we work with the fellas, and we're trying to teach the getting out of the me thinking and into the we thinking.
While the inmates are digging in the soil, learning about the particles that make up soil, they're also metaphorically digging within their soul. With Arnold, it was very unique with him because he was actually an inmate here at Avenal State Prison.
By the time I was 21, I was a real knucklehead doing heroin, cocaine, and I went to a party and I got a fight. I lost a fight. I was really, really embarrassed as a result of it, and I came back and I stabbed the guy. He ended up dying, and I was sentenced to 16 years to life for second-degree murder. And I spent the next 25 years in prison. What education did for me, I mean, seeing the world through an academic lens changes the whole perspective of living. Once upon a time, I just used to live just for the day, and as a result of education, I want to live for tomorrow. I want to see next week, I want to see next month, and that's what education did for me. And so I went back to school in 2012. 2014, I graduated, got my second AA degree, and then I thought about it, well, I can do 2 more years of school. And, one morning, 8 o'clock in the morning, trying to get to my class, and the buzzer goes off, and well, for 25 years, you hear a buzzer, you hit the floor. So guess what Arnold did?
So what is it like to come back and you're here all the time, but to be able to walk around campus, the campus that kind of shaped you?
I don't even feel like it really even happened, that I actually went through here and came, I saw, I completed.
About 95% of the people currently in prison will come back into the community one day. So something we have to ask ourselves is, what do we want to have happened during the time that they were incarcerated? So it's really a support program for formerly incarcerated students. So what we do is we assist with the application process to the university, and then if students are accepted to Fresno State and come to our program, then we create a community of support, of mentorship, of encouragement.
And for him to be incarcerated, you can tell the class focused more on what every little word he had to say. And it was so awesome because, you know, he's been through it. He related to us. He knows what it's like. He knows what we go through. And for him to accomplish so much and not stop at that level and to keep on continuing on when he gets out, that's even more than merrier. And I didn't know there was so many doors for us that can be opened, and he brought that to our attention.
Yeah, it was really super cool just to show him that we can do it. And I'd tell him, you know, I was there in your shoes, and I want you guys to be here in my shoes because we can. There's nothing stopping us but us.
When I see this video, it's just such a pleasure to know that the local community appreciates Project Rebound, they appreciate you personally, Arnold, they appreciate Insight Garden program. So I wonder if you want to tell us a little bit more, Arnold, about what it may have been like going back to Avenal with like a purpose now. It's been brought out by the video, but then there's other ways you may want to help us appreciate what it's like being back doing that wonderful gardening and training and inner work that you're doing with the inmates. So tell us what it's like going back to Avenal.
Well, initially, I certainly didn't want to go back to prison. last place I wanted to go after spending 25 years there. So the first day, it was a little challenge, and it eventually became therapeutic. And knowing there's people who learn through, you can see a success story, you can read about a success story, you can hear about a success story, but for people to actually meet someone, I thought it was more impactful, and it has shown to be more impactful. So by going back in and letting people know that it's possible, we can do it, and there's nothing stopping us but us. And some of I've been there since 2017, along with Katerina, and they followed my story going to school. And there's college programs now in the prisons, and so we always share what class we're taking and what essays we're going to be doing and what's next or what needs to be completed. And we have some deadlines. And I used to come in on Saturday mornings, my eyes all bulged out from staying up at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning doing my essays. And they, after 2 years of completing my school, and I finally did graduate, and they knew that I had graduated, but for me to come back in and show them what it looks like to graduate was just really, really super impactful. And I think we have some slides here that it's going to that shows the impact that it has on the fellows that are in there.
Yeah.
They're just.
It seems that not only do we hear them saying the change it brings to them to know you've changed, and that if he can do it, if this is possible for someone, why not me? So the idea is, with some of the possibilities of going back, we're seeing a real development in other people. I've seen that 3,500 people have already, I guess, benefited from what is Insight Garden. That's amazing. Here's some of them. Who's here that tell us about some of the groups that you're working with, some of the individuals that are part of your team out there, some of the success stories, Arnold.
Oh, there's quite a bit in there. So you can see the warden we have in there, and I met her when I was doing time there, and I was part of a different program at the time, and she was the principal there. And I had graduated from the Braille transcription program. We took a picture there, and then to fast forward it to where we're at today, for us to reconnect, and now she is the warden there, and she has seen the transition that I went through from being in prison out here, and now coming back into the prisons. We have another gentleman in there that's one of our students, Omar, who recently paroled, and he went through our year-long program. A month later, he paroled into our community, and he became one of our guest speakers at the fundraiser we had for the Inside Garden program here recently, roughly about a month ago now. Yeah. And he's one of our biggest success stories, as when he first entered the program, he used to come in with his dark shades and being quiet and standoffish. And after a year, he learned to take off his shades and got engaged, and he even led a group or two throughout the course. And for him to come out and actually do a presentation at the end of every arc that we do, we have 4 arcs that are 12 weeks per arc. And our last week that we have the arc, we have a presentation, a solo presentation, which helps them break out of their comfort zone. And they have to present for 3 minutes, and you can see the nervousness in our students. But Omar, he met that challenge, and not only did he take that challenge from the prison, but out here to the community and presented and became a guest speaker. For a whole fundraiser. It was really, really super awesome to see.
It was a very big deal, and I could know how nervous he was, but that he prevailed. And with so many people and so much going on at that fundraiser, it was wonderful.
Well, one of the things that really struck me about what he said that he learned throughout our program, and I think during his final months in prison, was he said the most important thing that I learned was how to love myself. And it all started there. If I could love myself, I could love my neighbor, my family, people in my community. And something about that shift, he said this is the last time he's been going through this cycle. This is the last time he is going to be incarcerated because that shift happened, I think, partly through that work with the soil, with himself in our curriculum. It's beyond us, really. I mean, he was doing that work already. But really amazing, you know, recognizing his worth, recognizing that he matters, and finding a community to support him out here in Fresno, I think is so important as we continue trying to build our, what we're calling our reentry bridging work of, you know, being a supportive community here, that that we find people are less likely to return if they have community support and resources.
Yeah, he learned
like
to take
him.
off that mask. You don't need that mask to survive. And once he took off that mask, he can move forward. And he certainly has moved forward. He's doing awesome out here.
Who qualifies to be part of your Insight Garden program? I mean, there are thousands of inmates. How do they get to be the blessed ones who are out there, as we've seen, doing the work?
Yeah.
How do they get this?
It's a waiting. The first come, first serve. Yeah, unfortunately, and it's very limited. We could only have 25 people per group, and it's a year long. So some people end up paroling before they get a chance to get in.
We have 100 people on our wait list right
wait,
now.
yeah.
It shows that, you know, and we're not just an Avenal and Central California Women's Facility, but we're in 11 total institutions in California, and then 2 in Indiana and 1 in Ohio. So when you mentioned those 3,500 who've participated, that's across the board there. But we could be serving so many more. We'd love to keep growing and expanding. It's clear that the desire's there.
And of course, the prisons, you know, they have different number of yards. There's 6 yards at Avenal, and we're only in 2 of the yards. There's still 4 other ones that are not being served, which could benefit from the program.
How would it get to be that you'd be in the other 4 yards? What would that take?
Fundraising. Yeah, that's the biggest culprit.
So that's why we want to support those events at the Gazebo Gardens?
Absolutely.
And do you have another one of those even scheduled, or?
Not scheduled yet, but it's in the making, and it's going to be held in the Bay Area this.
Okay.
Yeah. Hopefully next year we'll have it here again. It's around the same time.
But
in
do
August.
a lot of grant writing, a lot of fundraising, and some through the CDCR as the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation has shifted towards more of a rehabilitation mindset. They're starting to bring in more state funding for rehabilitation, and especially community-based programs, which we're really happy about to see more of that institutional support for programs like ours. That volunteers. We work, not just Arnold and I, but with folks who don't get paid for this, who come in and volunteer. Anyone can. If folks want to look at our website, which is www.insightgardenprogram.org, you can find volunteer opportunities on our website to come in and lend your support, whether it's financial or coming in and seeing what this is all about. We can work on clearances for people.
Yeah, you can totally witness the transformation, which is totally priceless in some of the fellas here. I mean, you see some tattoos all over their faces and walk around all mean, and then they see this butterfly or a hummingbird in a garden, and then they get all giddy. Oh, look at the hummingbird, and they just, all the kid comes out of them, and it's really, really priceless to see this.
I can only say that I saw Omar and Dina, and what I caught, the success of the program was in their face, it was in their words, it was in their manner of just breathing and living free and knowing they had accomplished something because of this fantastic Insight Garden program. We've got about 3.5 minutes, and there is one final story that I think would be a great way to wrap up our little program. So can you start with us, Katerina, about Sylvia Rios? Tell us about her and these 2 images we're going to be thinking about.
Sure. Well, Sylvia, Arnold and I met Sylvia at an event here in Fresno at Butler Mennonite Church called the Beating Guns Tour. And this is a group of folks who are going around the country. They're from a Christian background who've been inspired from that passage from Isaiah that talks about, they shall beat their guns, they shall beat their swords into plowshares. Well, we don't have a lot of swords that are killing people here in the U.S., but we do have a big gun issue of these mass shootings, and that they are calling on people to wake up to the gun violence issue going on in the country. And so people donated actually assault rifles and weapons to this event, the Beating Guns Tour, and they worked with a blacksmith, and they had a forge at the event to actually take a former assault rifle that someone donated after the Thousand Oaks shooting that happened recently at the Borderline Bar and Grill.
Oh my God,
and
yeah.
it wasn't that weapon that was used, but it was an NRA member who felt convicted personally to turn in his weapon. And they invited victims of gun violence and perpetrators to come together and hammer that tool into a gardening tool. So a sword to plowshare moment happened. And we were the recipients of that tool to then bring that into prison with us. And a very special person brought that in, Sylvia. And she lost her brother about 30 years ago to a shooting that happened in Reedley, not far from here. And her brother was killed, and Sylvia came in to prison with us, to Avenal, to present this tool that she helped to hammer into a gardening tool, turning her grief and rage and just beating this tool into this beautiful pick mattock that we've used in our garden now.
And for those who are watching it, who can see it, it is an amazing confirmation of the scripture from Isaiah. You can do this. We can turn evil into good. And now show us or tell us about the fruit of that tool. What did it do?
Yeah, well, when she came and shared in class just a very raw emotional story as she was processing her journey of forgiveness. You know, her family decided together to forgive the perpetrator of this, and she was preparing to go to his parole hearing. So in a way, our class was practice for her of meeting incarcerated people who have hurt others, who've harmed their community, and some also, many of them have been harmed and have been lost loved ones to gun violence as well. So that she shared her journey of forgiveness, and we reflected on what healing looks like. Many of them wept, and they said, we've never heard the victim story before. We've never had the chance to hear how our actions have hurt others, or to really reflect on they themselves have been wounded. So it opened something up, and Omar, actually, who you met at this event recently at the fundraiser, who was in our program at the time, suggested planting a rose bush in honor of victims of gun violence and in honor of Sylvia's brother who had passed away. So we had a very special moment after Sylvia came in of planting this bush using the gardening tool.
Yeah, so tools that were used to take life are now being converted into tools to bring life.
I want to thank both of you for being here today and for leading me deeper into what is restorative justice. We'll be back again next week, God willing, with another program on restorative justice. Until then, God bless.